Hello and welcome back to the Woe Is She podcast. I'm Charlie Parks and I'm here with Matt Clough.
Hello.
If you are listening to us, as usual, on Spotify or wherever you got your podcasts, you won't notice any difference. But we are trying something a bit different this week. We are on video. We are coming at you live. Well, not live, but direct from our dining room. And I've set dressed and everything. I've made a real effort. So how are you feeling about being on camera, Matt?
I'm pretending it's not there. So,
Okay.
yeah, if you're watching this and thinking, why is he just not acknowledging any of this at all?
Well, don't start doing something weird like picking your nose or something.
I mean, I wouldn't do that normally, but I'm just going to talk to you as I normally would. And, yeah.
Yeah, we'll try not to do, obviously, with us not usually being a visual medium, we'll try not to do too many things that rely on visuals, because, that would just be like...
I mean, I don't know what you've got planned. Sort of like
an interpretive dance. I'm going to recap England's game against Spain via interpretive dance, and the light will go off at halfway through.
Okay.
On brand. What I am, for the benefit of the listener, I am quite annoyed with you because I'm wearing my Leicester hoodie, and you've also opted to wear your Leicester hoodie.
Yeah.
As much as we try to every week turn it into a Leicester podcast, it's not. So I am aware as well that I have hung up 2 Leicester shirts behind us as well. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah.
I mean,
we're never going to beat the allegations of,
we're not really
being biased,
we're not really going to be too Leicester heavy on this week's episode.
I don't think we're going to be very Leicester heavy at all, but I'm sure we'll manage to shoehorn it in somehow.
That's what you believe. She believe.
Of course. Well, spoiler alert. So yeah, we thought, well, the plan was to do an episode today, or for your benefit, it's Friday. Just talking about the England game. Wrapping up that sort of conversation about this England camp and where it leaves us and whatever. And then bloody old Matt Beard went and got himself sacked, didn't he?
Yeah, so and Laura Kaminski.
And Laura Kaminski. So I was like, well, and then the Southampton manager as well, Remy Annan. So, I don't know what has happened in women's football in England this week, but clearly everyone's just getting the sack. So I thought, we best talk about that. So, yeah, I think we're just having a Friday night.
I was going to say, you've got a wine, I have a beer.
We've both got a drink on the go, just a little casual chat. And I thought it would be a good opportunity to try out our video chops.
Well, it's all you, isn't it? As we've always said, you're the only one who really pours effort into this.
I'm the only one who really is bringing anything to the table.
You've got your little tablet.
I've because my phone is serving as the webcam. This is how professional we are on this podcast. Because my phone is serving as the webcam that's filming us. I've got I'll hold it up for the benefit of the viewer. I've got a 5-year-old Lenovo tablet with probably about as much processing power as a fridge. So if you see me pausing or getting frustrated at any point, it's because I can't scroll down my notes because it's frozen. But it's alive and kicking as we speak. So fingers crossed it survives the episode. So yeah, we will kick off as promised by talking. I said that about last week's episode, didn't I? It'll be a quick episode. Nothing is ever brief on this podcast. We ramble, so bear with. But we will talk about England. So obviously, 1-0 against the world champions at Wembley. And I don't know, I felt a little bit vindicated because I think there was a lot of catastrophising after the result against Portugal, which was disappointing. As there always is when England don't win. Or even if we don't win particularly convincingly, there's always a bit of catastrophising.
Yes.
Are we not able to compete in Europe anymore? Is Serena Wiegmann out of ideas? Have we gone stale? Whatever. And I thought, well, I knew we had it in us to beat Spain. Yep. And lo and behold, we did. And I think that's obviously really important in the context of the Nations League because we needed the points, but also it's important as a morale thing, isn't it? A boost for the team. And then obviously to quell this narrative that we are, not capable of competing with the best teams anymore. And I think we did show some real character and strength and some quality, although I wasn't blown away by us as a team. I think some individuals had some excellent performances, but I wouldn't say there was quality necessarily.
I think it was a moments game, wasn't it? You've got individual moments of brilliance. I mean, from both teams, I think, as well.
You're always going to expect. I mean, England normally are quite dominant in possession, but obviously against Spain, you are going to have a little bit, cede a little bit of control and a little bit of possession. And I think, I was surprised initially by the possession stats. So Spain had 58% and we had 42%. But obviously, I think that massively dropped, but it did drop off in the second half to like 39%.
Yeah,
I think it was like something like 45 in the first half or something. So yeah, you are going to cede a little bit that control. And I thought, like, those early stages of the game, obviously they come out flying at the blocks, don't they? They come right at you. They're not particularly like slow build up. They are very, very focused on dominating in possession, but they don't build up slowly, really, do they? They ping the ball about really quickly.
No, and they're not, as we commented on during the game, it's not like the Spain men's team that won the World Cup and did all that stuff about 15 years ago. It's like, that it's not so much this hell-bent focus on recycling the ball if the chance isn't great. Like, they are going to take shots. They are going to try and force the issue a bit. Yeah,
absolutely. And force they did. Yeah. But obviously because they do force the issue, you do get opportunities to normally counter-attack against them. But obviously, I think there were moments, where we did try and do a bit of our usual sort of build-up. Yeah. But I just thought, like, as soon as we started getting chances, I was like, we need to move the ball quicker. Because as soon as we get the ball, we've got to make the most of that chance.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think obviously we did eventually. I can't remember when the goal came, and I can't check because my phone is there, and I'm not going to try and Google anything on this ancient device. But it wasn't like
it was the 33rd minute.
33rd minute. So yeah, I felt like the goal had been coming. I felt like we had our opportunities.
I think we'd weathered the early storm, hadn't we? Obviously, they hit the bar, and then it felt like after about the first sort of 10 minutes, we really grew into the game, and then it was building for a while, wasn't it? I think.
I do feel that if Spain had a more clinical striker or a clinical person in the box, that we could have been punished a bit more.
Yeah,
because I think Lucia Garcia, we've talked about on the podcast before, is great, and I just looked like she never stops running. She's really industrious, and she's really obviously very skilled technically as well.
Yeah.
But she just seemed to not have her shooting boots on, and obviously had a number of like golden opportunities. Which Hampton had a good game. She was in fine fettle, but I think there was a couple where you think like a more natural number 9 or whatever, or somebody a bit more in the mood, I guess, would finish those chances.
I think the one she hits the bar with particularly, I think she would look back on that and say...
She was sort of leaning back and she sort of like tried to sort of...
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's hard to describe, but if you saw the game I'm talking about. And then obviously, like we've spoken before on the podcast about Paraleo, and the fact that she's not a natural number 9, and I think she has some bright moments in terms of like taking players on.
Yeah.
But I think she's more valuable as a winger, and she doesn't seem to like want to shoot like ever. She did have that shot from outside the box. Yeah, that
one good effort.
Again, the ball fell to her a few times in the box, and for some reason she just panicked.
Yeah,
didn't shoot.
I feel like Spain, they probably would have seen that England goal where Russo obviously does amazingly for it, and probably would have just thought, if she was playing for us, if we swapped her for whoever, Lucia Garcia or whoever else, like, we probably win this game because she's in fantastic form at the moment and made that goal.
Yeah, and obviously, like, I think it's always, impressive to see. I mean, particularly Bonmati and Caldente. I said to you, like, as soon as they got the ball, I was like, oh no, close them down, don't give them any space, because they are just unreal, aren't they? I mean, there's a lot of talented players in that squad, but those two in particular, I was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you spoke about Russo. I think, obviously the goal, it was sort of bundled over the line a little bit by Jess Park.
Yeah.
Did well to be in the right place at the right time, but all of the credit for that goal for me goes to Russo. who was just absolutely unreal.
Yeah.
And turning the defender and just creating that opportunity for the goal. She was unreal again. And then Lauren James as well was absolutely outstanding. I mean, something we spoke about both in the Portugal game and in this game is that obviously it's Lauren James. You know she's going to be amazing going forward. But in both of these games, it was really great to see her really good defensively as well. And I think she was even better against Spain than she was against Portugal.
She had that one tackle right at the end where
she came flying up the pitch.
It's like the sort of exactly the type of tackle you'd tell anyone other than your central defenders, you do not make this type of a tackle because you will give away a penalty. And yeah, absolutely unbelievable.
Like I say, I don't know. I think I said in the last episode, I don't know if it's Serena, Sonia, like both of them, but keep up what you're doing because I love to see it. I really do.
Absolutely. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was trying to remember if we'd said this on the podcast or if it was just one of our unrecorded rambling sessions, which believe it or not are actually even more long-winded and circuitous than the podcast can be. But I think I said in our prediction episode before the season we did with Sam that I thought Lauren James might end up leaving Chelsea just on the basis that
I think I said it as like a
hot take,
which was the most boring hot take ever. I was just like, I don't know. I just don't think I think Bob Pastor's quite wedded to a system, and I don't see her fitting into that system because obviously
you kind of need to build. What we were saying was you need to really build around LJ as the 10 because you don't get much out of possession, and it feels like I don't know if you should listen to the podcast. I was going to say she's taken that viewpoint on board, but obviously
Lauren James or Sonia Pastor.
LJ's obviously missed a huge chunk of the season, and it's like it feels like she's kind of, while she's been away, maybe she has been looking at Chelsea and thinking, you know what, there might if I try and it sounds harsh. I don't feel like it's a hugely fair criticism of her, but she might have looked at it and just thought, you know what, the way I've played in the past, where I am this kind of number 10, not quite a luxury player because obviously she is so good, but like. My job's with the ball. When I don't have the ball, it's up to my teammates to figure it out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do wonder if she's just watched how Chelsea have obviously progressed, and obviously they've had this amazing unbeaten start to the season in all competitions. I just think maybe she's looked at that and thought, you know what, I'm gonna have to work on this because otherwise I'm struggling to see myself slotting in here as much as I want to. And it's brilliant to see. I think she was absolutely immense, and she obviously it was a weird one because we didn't see a huge amount of her with the ball. There's a couple of nice touches. She obviously had that shot which brought a really good save from Katakoi, and but I think just defensively, and same with Chloe Kelly as well. Like she only came on as a sub, but I think you could just tell. I think it was almost, in a weird way, it was almost quite an old school English football performance.
That's exactly what Millie Bright said in her post-match, isn't it? She said it was a very English performance. It was very industrious. It was like,
we're going to outwork you. We're going to kind of try and physically get the better of you and outwork you and run harder, all this stuff.
Speaking of which, like, Millie Bright was an absolute
she was
brick wall. And I think I was critical about her performance against Portugal. I thought her passing was a bit off, and obviously she was being exposed a bit for her sort of pace or lack of, but I thought she was an absolute brick wall. Her passing was brilliant, and then she just kept charging up the pitch.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I'm sorry, what's happening? I saw like something on social of like, someone tweeted like Millie Bright, that gif from The Hobbit, like, I'm going on an adventure. She was just off. And Lucy Bronze was just having the time of her life.
Yeah.
And she was just being like a little shit in the best possible way. Like, she would like win a foul like in, semi sort of suspicious circumstances, and then she'd get on and she'd have a massive grin on her face.
Yeah.
And you could just tell she was just having the best time.
There was a really nice clip that the Lionesses put on their social accounts I can't remember. I think it was like the day after the game, and it was that one kind of tussle she had with Bonmati on the edge of the area, where Bonmati is like twisting and turning, trying to make a space for the cross.
Yeah.
And I think Bronze is using all of the experience she's had from playing with Bonmati for several years and just won't give it up. Bonmati ends up hitting the deck, asking for a foul. Bronze sort of struts away with a big grin on her face, and I thought, she's an interesting one to me, because I think we said it on the podcast before, but I do think she seems to have this reputation, which I think we both said we don't really understand. I feel like she's whether it's just because she's been on the scene for so long and she's been such a great player for so long, there is a perception that any kind of drop off means she's finished. I also don't know if it's similar to the kind of thing we've sort of speculated about Earps in the past, where because her kind of fame has sort of transcended the sport, is there a little bit of kind of like
more scrutiny,
but also maybe like a bit of like Woso fan hipsterdom, where it's like, well, everyone knows Lucy Bronze, everyone knows Mary Earps, so it's actually I'm gonna show how much I know ball by sort of talking about like, oh, it's she's actually her girlfriend's actually better than her and stuff like that. So, but I thought she was immense, and generally her like. You can never doubt her work rate. I think the thing we've always, we've worried about with Bronze for the last couple of years is she kind of trying to write checks that her legs can no longer quite cash in terms of how much she's going up and down. But I thought her, she had a sprint right towards the end of the game trying to pin Spain back, and it was, again, it feels to me like quite a lazy line of analysis, but I'm going to stick to it. It's just saying, it felt like we just had the energy, we had the effort, there was a spirit there, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's all very talk sport, proper football man kind of stuff to say. Like we outfought them, we wanted it more, but
we did.
I feel like that kind of got us over the line there. Really,
we 100% did. We 100% did, and you could just see like. The Spanish players were frustrated. And,
yes, absolutely.
That's what you want to do, isn't it? You want to frustrate your opponent.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what we did. And onwards and upwards. I think. Hopefully, like I say, like until I don't know, we managed to like lose like 3-2 to Belgium again or something, and then it starts up again. But yeah, I mean, one thing I will say is that. I'm just tired of this narrative now of the goalkeepers. I'm tired of it. So there was a quote from her in her press conference after.
It's in Serena.
Yeah, where she said, I've got 3 goalkeepers, 2 are fighting for the number 1 spot, and they're both giving me headaches. And I just thought to myself, why is that what's giving you a headache? What? That wasn't a problem. It wasn't a problem that we had to solve. Like, maybe it was like in terms of like we had a goalkeeper that was our number 1, and maybe she was worried if she got injured, something would go wrong. The level would drop off in that area of the pitch, and she wanted to make sure that we had a deputy that could step up in big moments, and maybe that's still the plan. But I'm just sort of like, why is this the only thing that you're concerned about and the only thing that you're willing to experiment with? When, like, I've got a list of things here on my tablet that I would be having headaches about, and that ain't one of them. So, like, why do we look like we can't get anything happening going forward when Lucy Bronze comes off? That would be my first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Why is second half Kira Walsh now a thing?
Yeah.
Like, why is in the second half against Spain, I mean, I know they were really pushing and I know they were coming out, but like, it's like what we said before, like Kira Walsh is great in possession when she's got space.
Yep.
But out of possession, she doesn't offer you a massive amount. And I thought she was quite shaky defensively in the second half.
I think, even with the ball, I can't remember exactly when it was, but she definitely had the ball in our area and tried something, and it basically just went straight to Spain, reignited their attack. So it wasn't her best game, I would say. I think I agree.
I feel like sometimes I feel like we bang on about that too much on the podcast, or it's more of it's like too repetitive, like everyone says it sort of thing. But we have sort of built this England system around having an elite defensive midfielder like Kira Walsh. And if she doesn't have a particularly good game, it's quite noticeable.
Yeah.
And I know we won. So, but I just think like she unfortunately wasn't one of the individual standout performances. And like, yeah, anyway. And why are we still struggling in front of goal sometimes? I feel like the last few games that we've, other than that crazy game at Wembley against Germany, where we scored 3, like, I feel like we have struggled a bit to create.
Yeah.
And we've only scored like 1 or 2.
It's difficult to see us repeating what we did in the Euros last time, where we were really racking up the goals.
But
and you had that, like
against Portugal, for example, that's why this was frustrating. Like, I wouldn't necessarily have expected us to go out and beat Spain like 4-0. But I feel like in that first half, when Portugal were set up the way that they were, we should have been looking for 2 or 3 at least.
Yeah. So
why are we struggling with that? And like, why do we have games where we like don't make substitutions until the 80th minute when we're already, we've conceded? Well, in a game when we're winning 1-0 and we look like we're going to score another goal, we're all of a sudden making changes in the 60th minute.
Yeah,
I one thing I don't understand with Sarina is her approach, like her in-game management. Like, sometimes I just don't understand the substitutions that she makes, or in fact doesn't make.
Yeah.
That's one thing I don't get, and I think she doesn't have all of her options available to her at the moment, obviously, that she would like. And obviously we learned over the previous 2 tournaments that she's very systematic, and she likes to have a starting 11, and she likes to have set substitutions to come on. But I don't know. I don't know whether the game's moved on now, and we need to sort of adapt a bit more, which is obviously something we didn't do particularly well against Portugal. And fair enough, against Spain, it worked, it was fine. But I don't know. I'm just a bit.
I think in defence of Sarina, I think I came up with the theory about the Portugal game that the reason she didn't make subs sooner was because she wanted to get that defence tested.
Yeah, that's true. You did, yeah.
And I kind of feel like if that was the plan, if that was what she was trying to do, like, I want you to face attacks. Because obviously, I mean, Portugal weren't the most attacking even when Nazareth came on. But like, I feel like that it was kind of, again, I'm not in her head, I don't know, but I feel like she probably looked at that and thought, you know what, we haven't really been tested. I know people are getting tired, but they haven't been tested yet. I don't want to just freshen it up and just block Portugal out necessarily. I want them to be, actually kind of put to the test, really. And then, against Spain, obviously exactly the same 10 outfield players. We are under the cosh and we kind of work our way through it. And I think from her perspective, she'd probably say, well, that struggle against Portugal may have been vindicated there. But I do fundamentally agree. Going back to the goalkeeper question, I think most people were of a mind this international break, that it was, things had kind of swung back in Earps' favour. I think she started that Portugal game. I think most people were expecting her to start the Spain game.
I certainly was, because I was giving it the big one on the last episode. So
I mean, I don't know. I would say, obviously the Germany game wasn't fantastic, and I think that the real discourse around that particular international break was when Earps came in against South Africa. It was like, okay, everyone just looks calmer, looks more settled. It may well just be that Sarina's just thinking, I've just got to give myself options. I do agree. There's options elsewhere that I would have preferred to have seen tested than Earps or Hampton. Cough, cough, Ruby Mace. But I'm.
All I'll say is, the last word I'll say on it, she says, is, I've made my personal feelings clear. I've got a Mary Up shirt hanging up behind me. But I think what frustrates me is that this is the narrative, this is the story every time, when we've got so many other things that I would much rather us be looking at. and I would much rather Serena be scratching her head about than, you know, which keeper am I going to put in net, because like I sort of, again, I gave it the big one on the podcast. Like, I feel more confident and comfortable when Mary's in goal, and then Hannah had a really good performance, and I thought she looked confident, and I did trust her. So I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter.
But no, I do agree, and I feel like, you know, just going back to the point you made about the sort of the last Euros and how systematized we were in terms of the subs. You know, Ellen White started every game, and then Russo came on every game, and it felt like very much a sort of, you know, you give defenders 60 minutes of headaches and problems to solve, and then with White and her movement, and then you bring on Russo, and it's like an entirely different puzzle to solve, and obviously more physically strong and stuff like that. I feel like going into this Euros, you know, if Russo was to pick up an injury now, I have absolutely no idea what the contingency plan is. Like,
precisely,
you know,
but it's fine, because we know we can put either Earps or Hampton in goal, but that's all that we need to know. This is what I mean. This is what frustrates me about it. Is like, why are you spending your time and energy on that when, like you say, if God forbid Alessia Russo did pick an injury, what would be the plan?
Yeah, is it Aggie Beaver-Jones? Is it Jess Naz? Is it Nikita, like the newly recalled Nikita Paris?
Is what I mean.
Is it Beth England? Do you go back to her? Like
any of those 10 outfield players? Because I think, like, it's hard to say, isn't it, that that's her starting 11 from the last two games, because, you know, we probably don't have players that we would like in the squad, like Hemp, Greenwood, Stanway. But I think it's as close as we would get to it. And if any of those 10 outfield players gets injured, what is the plan? Like, if Lucy Bronze can't come to the Euros, what's the plan?
Yeah. It feels like...
If Kira Walsh can't come to the... Like, what's the plan? Like, that's what frustrates me the most about, you know, aside from my personal feelings, like, that's what frustrates me the most. It's like, focus your energy where your energy needs to be focused. We know we've got two really good goalkeepers, and we've got a third really, you know, we've really got solid goalkeeper.
4 keepers we could call upon. So
we need to stop worrying about it and worry about other things. Serena, maybe she'll do that in the next Nations League round of fixtures. I don't know, but anyway, we shall move on. I know I said to myself I was going to be more positive about England generally, but I've gone very negative.
I think we can cap it off by just saying, I think psychologically, I know we've still got to, like you say, we're playing Belgium twice. We're hosting Portugal, and we're going away to Spain before the Euros. And obviously a lot can change. Obviously, like you say, Portugal are really up and coming. Belgium have given us a lot of problems in the past, and Spain is Spain, and we're going away.
Spain is Spain.
But I do feel like, I don't want to say whatever happens from here. You know, I'm feeling much better, because obviously if we lose all those games 3-0, I'll be like, okay, this is not looking great. But I do feel psychologically going into the Euros, just knowing that you've been able to hold the USA, beat Spain, beat France away in the last 12 months, you know, you've got to be feeling fairly bullish that, like, on our day, you know, it's probably not going to be as straightforward as the last Euros was. It feels like, as you've already hinted at there, there's more kind of points in the team where if one player goes down, it's suddenly a bit like, oh, okay, I don't know what the contingency plan is here. But I think psychologically, obviously, I feel like we're in a much better space than we were, you know, end of last year, basically. So onwards and upwards.
Some very good positivity, Matt. Well done.
Yeah,
you've a little insight there into our marriage.
And we have it.
I am the eternal pessimist, and Matt is the one that has to be positive. And thus is every single Leicester game that we've been to this season.
Yeah,
like, we're gonna lose. No, it'll be fine. We're gonna lose. We're gonna fucking lose.
All I will say, cap it off as well, is England. The European nations haven't even seen our best player yet on the pitch. When Ruby Mays hits that field, you know, the football world is going to know about it.
Yeah, well, yeah. We always bring it back to Leicester, don't we? And speaking of, I just want, before we move on to the Matt Beard, Laura Kaminski situation, I just wanted to again, toot my own horn a little bit, that I said, watch out for Japan, you watch out for them, and if you haven't been following what's been going on there in the SheBelieves Cup, she does in fact believe, Japan does, that is.
She believed.
She did believe, and Japan beat the USA to win the SheBelieves Cup. And yeah, I mean, I think US fans would want me to point out that they have a very sort of different looking squad to what they might call their strongest squad or roster, to use their terminology.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're missing players like Germa, obviously, and the triple espresso.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think this has obviously ended. I think it was an unbeaten run for Emma Hayes since she took over, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so.
I think they've had a draw, but
we drew with them,
been...
but I don't think they've been defeated.
Yeah, I think they drew with Colombia as well.
Okay.
I forgot we drew with them. It's me being negative about England again. I'm just raising like results.
My ignorance of the SheBelieves Cup, but hadn't they won 4 in a row or something like that? Quite a few, basically.
I believe you.
Yeah,
she believes. But so yeah, I just wanted to toot my own horn really and just say, yeah, I think they're going to be going into the next World Cup. I think Japan are going to be, you know, up there with like favourites with like the US. And you know, I think, I know I said I was going to be positive, but like put all your hopes on the Euros, because I have no hopes about that World Cup unless we suddenly like
that's a long way away to be thinking
into
about.
Like this
so
massive,
it's a long way off.
Massively dominant team. Like
Ruby Mace will be what, 25 then? So.
As I said last time, like. Okay, right. So if it's not Claire Wheeler, it's Ruby Mace. I mean, I'm happy for you to keep mentioning Ruby Mace, and I am for you to keep mentioning Claire Wheeler.
Well,
but
all I'm saying is Australia lost all of their games in the SheBelieves Cup. Who was injured for the entire tournament?
Why did I bring up Claire Wheeler?
Claire Wheeler.
I'm just going to have some wine. Just Claire Wheeler sip.
Oh yeah, I mean, if there is a why was she drinking game,
drink every time we hear Matt mention fucking Claire Wheeler.
Absolutely, out of your trolley,
out of your trolley,
out of your tree, off your whatever.
This, I promise you, listener / viewer, this is our first drink. But obviously, although I've accused you of bringing it back to Leicester every time, the main reason I wanted to bring it up was no, I did want to bring it up for, you know, wider context reasons, but a big shout out to Yuka Mimiki, who plays for Leicester, and
Sao Takarada,
and Sarah Takarada, but mainly to Mimiki because she scored in the second minute in that game against the USA, and it was a brilliant goal. I've watched it like 10 times. I want to repeat that at some point this season, but with Ruby and Yuka.
Yeah.
Because it was an absolutely, please go and look it up. It's a great goal. It's an absolutely sublime ball from Yui Hasegawa, but Yuka just times a run perfectly, like holds the ball up while the keeper and the defender just run into each other, and then just turns around, smashes it into the net, and it just brought me a lot of joy. So, but you know, on a more serious note, on a more sort of general note, seriously, like Japan they are serious.
Yeah, they're a serious team.
They do, in fact, believe.
Yeah.
And I think I said last time, like, they've got so much depth.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, there's just so many players in that team that impress me. Like, because we've got a lot of WSL players, as we said.
Yes.
Like, and they just, every week, like, Hamano, obviously, Hasegawa.
Yeah.
Ueki.
I think Miyazawa's obviously having a great season.
Having a good season with United as well.
I really rate.
Yeah. So yeah, scary times. But so enough about international football. Enough about woke international football. It's back to the real. It's back to the Barclays. It's back to the chaos of the Barclays. Because, as I said, we plan to mainly talk about the international break in this episode, and then, you know, Liverpool yesterday were like, we're just going to sack Matt Beard. And yeah, I mean. And then obviously the news came out today that Laura Kaminski, the Crystal Palace manager, had been sacked. And I think it's interesting because I'm sort of surprised by both, but for slightly different reasons.
Yeah.
But we'll get on to Kaminski in a minute, but I wanted to talk about Beard first. So obviously the context there being last season they finished 4th. And I think they only got back into the WSL in 2022, didn't they? So obviously to go up the table that quickly is quite impressive. So obviously, I think everyone thought, well, this season they're going to really kick on. Like, they're going to be pushing for the Champions League spots. They're going to be, the real ones to watch.
Yeah.
And as we've said before, such as the curse of the WSL, like normally that team that gets pegged as the real challenger will have an absolute mare.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they're currently 7th with 8 games left, and they would have to win every single one of their games to equal their points total from last season. So that is feeling unlikely.
Yes.
Particularly because I think a big reason, well, obviously they're not going to win sorry if you're a Liverpool fan, but I think you'll agree with me. I don't think you're going to win all 8 of your games. But I think, one of the big things is like they did the double over Man United, and Man United are so much better this season and things like that. I think teams around them have just... I think they got a result against last season have just got better.
The mid-table, I think, in general has just improved enough. And Liverpool have kind of atrophied enough for it all to kind of equalise a bit.
But, the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because I think for me, I feel for Matt Beard, because I think that, like, if this is what they're saying, they really want to push for those spots, those top spots. They really want to go for it. They really want to, title charge, whatever. Their investment does not match that ambition. So, like, I was looking earlier, and I mean, obviously, it's it's well known. Like, I knew they hadn't bought many players in this season.
Yeah.
But I was looking at this situation. Like, they only bought in 3 players over the summer. So obviously Olivia Smith, Cornelia Capox and Gemma Evans. So obviously 2 attacking signings and 1 defensive one. So they got 3 in on loan in the January window, all midfielders.
Yeah.
But I think Bernabé's like sort of a left back, isn't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
But 12 players went out in the summer.
Yeah.
So, okay, granted, some of those were kind of, squad players or younger players that you wouldn't necessarily have heard of or would have had game time, but, it included players like Lawley, Coy Visto, Van der Sanden, Miri Taylor, Missy Kearns, people that were sort of either regularly starting or
getting a lot of minutes. There's a lot of minutes they've lost there, yeah.
So not only did they not really replace those players, they also didn't really build from there either. And then going on from what I was just saying about the teams around them pushing on, like teams like United being a lot better. Like, if you look at what they've done, yes, obviously before the season we were like, oh, there's a lot of key players going out the door. But I will hold my hands up and say, like, they recruited really well. Both, like, if you look at who they've bought in, Turland, Bizet, like Janssen, players like that. And then even Brighton, bringing like players like Kirby and Paris in, like, it's made the difference. The recruitment has made the difference.
Yeah.
And they just haven't invested. Yeah. And he kept saying that, didn't he? He kept saying, look, I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. Yeah. And I will also acknowledge the fact that they have struggled with injuries as well. So, players that were really important to them last season, like Herbinger and Roman Haug, like they had a couple of,
Roman Haug's missed a lot of the season, and he kind of, I completely agree with what you've said there. I think, in hindsight as well, you mentioned that how often Beard was mentioning the investment and, how his budget compared to other teams and stuff. And I feel like with hindsight now, knowing he's gone, it kind of feels like, we don't know how long sort of potential kind of disagreements and unhappiness over the level of investment had been going on, because obviously some managers just do that in order to try and provoke more investment. But with now knowing what we know now, it's kind of like, okay, had he asked for something quite different in the summer, not being given it, and he's just kind of been spent a lot of the season sort of saying, well, what am I meant to do? I mean,
I do.
Sorry.
I do want to. Sorry, before you go, I do want to reiterate again. I think I said it in our other 8 episode or whenever. I think we've talked about Liverpool quite a lot, so I've probably said it multiple times. But I do think Olivia Smith was a fantastic signing, and she's clearly a player with a lot of talent and exceptionally high ceiling. But I don't think she's anywhere near the finished product.
No.
And I think if that was going to be your plan, was just to bring in this star signing and try and pin everything on her, I just think quite clearly it's not worked.
Yeah.
And like, you know, yeah, she is scoring goals, but she's only scored 4.
Yeah.
And like, that's a bit rich from someone whose team's only scored 9 total. And our top scorer is our 36-year-old like utility player. But
how many goals of the month has Olivia Smith won this year?
She might have won 1. Has she not won 1?
I don't know.
I would check, but again, my phone is the camera, so I've completely lost my train of thought there.
Sorry.
I'm just thinking about Janice's volley again against Villa. But it's like I say, like those aren't like top striker numbers, are they?
No.
Especially if you're wanting to push for that top, you know, those top 3 spots. And like I was checking earlier, obviously like Turland scored like 7. Obviously Russo's on like what?
I don't
13 now, I think.
Something like that. Certainly double figures.
Bunny Shaw, and then Chelsea are a bit different because they obviously got much more rotation in their attack. But you know, it feels like anyone at Chelsea was banging a goal. It's all right for some, innit? But yeah, and she's just not prolific enough yet. And I mean, she might be, you know, a couple of seasons down the line. But I feel like, yeah, there's been a lot of reliance on her, and we spoke about this as well about like how I feel like they've tried to be a more pressing team this season, and she leads the press a lot because she's good at it, but she can't do it all on her own.
No.
So I just think, that was, fair enough. Bring her in 100%. But if that's all you're willing to invest, and that's like you've spent all of your budget on that pretty much, like that's not really going to cut it. You need depth, proper depth in the squad to really push. And I just, I think, like I say, I feel a bit bad for him because I feel like he genuinely was doing the best with what he'd got. And like, we also did sort of theorise that maybe they were trying to evolve a bit into a style that they thought they wanted to play, or it was sort of a bit more suited to a player like Smith and having her up top. But like, and it obviously you look at the stats and it's just all, so they're conceding more goals, obviously. So like 1.71 per game versus 1.27 per game last season. And then, but the goals scored is what's really concerning. That's just completely gone off a cliff. Because like, I think another thing that we've said as well is like, sometimes if you're a top team in the WSL, like, okay, you can afford to concede a few more goals, but if you're just going to outscore your opponent, then it sort of, you know, all works out in the end, doesn't it? You know, but they're scoring 0.93 goals per game versus 1.64 goals per game last season. So pretty much like halved the number of goals that they're scoring per game.
Which, unless your defence goes from like being, you know, it was a very good defence last year to being almost unbeatable. Like, you're struggling there.
I will say though as well, like last season, they massively outperformed their XG by like 10 goals, whereas this season they're like underperforming.
Yeah,
you know, they've got an XG of 15 and they've scored 13.
So not a massive underperformance, but that's a big swing to compensate for if you were overperforming so much last year, kind of thing.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. If you bring in a big attacking signing, surely your goal scoring dropping off that much is a concern.
Yeah.
And I mean, the goals against last season was about right. So expected goals against was 27.2 and then actual was 28.
Yeah, it's fine.
But this season, again, a massive sort of
swing.
18.3 expected, 24 conceded.
Right, yeah.
So they conceded 6 more goals than they should have done, basically. So it's like, everything's just sort of...
Everything's gone in the wrong direction.
Dropped. And it is hard to... Like, I was doing a bit more research earlier around stats and like trying to pinpoint why that's happened, but I can't find anything particularly that really sort of points to a massive change in the way they're trying to play, or, you know, something, you know, there's not really like a key point of like, this is what's happened and this is why you're not scoring enough goals and why you're not, why you're conceding more.
It's not like they're playing out from the back and getting caught and conceding loads of goals like that. And you say, oh, you weren't doing that last year, stop doing that and you solve your problem.
So the only conclusion that I came to was that the teams around them and like have got better. Like you say, the mid-table has got better, and they just haven't.
Yeah.
So like Brighton, obviously, Man United, who finished below them last season, have suddenly, I say title challengers,
got their act together.
They are currently second.
Yep.
And then Spurs are Spurs, but then we've obviously Leicester have managed to get 4 points off them, and I think did we get 1 point off them last season, or did we not get any points off them last season?
I mean, certainly at home we lost 4-0, didn't we?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Everton have beaten them as well.
Yeah, Everton. Yeah, and it's just I think they just sort of not progressed, and they've not evolved in the way that they needed to evolve to push on. It was like they sort of, I don't know, did the ownership sort of, or whatever, look at that and think, well, we've got to fourth this season, so if we add this 19-year-old wonder kid in the mix, surely that's it, it'll be fine. She'll bang in like
if
20 goals,
and
we'll be
Leanne Kiernan or someone like that, then we're laughing.
It's potentially a bit short-sighted. And
I just my 2 cents is, I think
Sorry, I went on a massive tangent there and interrupted your thought. Go on.
That's right. I agree with everything you said there. I think it is in a kind of indicative of how this season's gone for them, that people, when it was announced Miedemar was leaving Arsenal, were legitimately saying,
she should go to
Liverpool. Liverpool's the one for her. But
I feel like that would have been like much as I say, like Olivia Smith, fantastic signing. I feel like that should have been the sort of signing that
would be like the foundational kind
and by the way, she was free, so like
No, I agree. I think in terms
I'm not saying that we're not saying that signing Vivian Miedemar would have fixed everything, because but
no, but I think the point you were making
probably would have helped.
If you are gonna make this one statement, if that's your transfer policy, we're making one big signing and she's going to become the linchpin of the team. As you say, as good as Olivia Smith is, she's probably going to be more productive over the coming decade than Miedemar is. But I think you'd look at Miedemar personally as she could legitimately score us 20 goals a season every season for the next 3 or 4 years. Yeah. I completely agree. I think it feels like I don't want to use the word lazy, but I feel like generally, and with the benefit of hindsight, we can look back on Liverpool now and you sort of say, really what they needed was a kind of an overall upgrade across the team in terms of players in positions, rather than what they did, which was kind of like, we're going to sacrifice a fair bit of depth and try and just do one big upgrade in one position. Yeah. It almost feels like, sort of rising tide raises all boats kind of thing. Like, you could have signed a defender who's 10% better and a midfielder who's 10% better and an attacker who's 10% better, and you would have seen more of a benefit. I think the XG stuff you mentioned was really interesting, because it sounds like in general the underlying numbers haven't shifted that much, but what's changed this season, last season, they were squeezing more goals out of their chances than they should have been. They were stopping more goals than they technically should have been. Mm-hmm. And this season, it feels like everything's just kind of not only, variance like to back to kind of par, but has gone even further the other way. And again, this is entirely speculation on my part here, but again, looking back now and seeing how often Beard was mentioning the investment and what he was having to manage and all of this kind of stuff, you do wonder if they, him and the team kind of got to the end of last season and thought, we've done so well, this summer's going to be massive, we're really going to kick on, and then the investment they were kind of expecting didn't materialize, and then it's just kind of snowballed from there, because some of the players were just like, it's not a huge thing to say, if I kind of broke my neck for you last season, you haven't supported us, well, my performance is it's going to drop by 1 or 2%, but that can be the difference, and that's where those kind of XG variance numbers suddenly come in, and the stuff that was going for them last season, it stopped going for them, and I think
it's a good point, actually.
Just the manner of his departure as well. Obviously, there's already been quite a lot of speculation. Is whether he'd already been told he was leaving at the end of the the season, and he kind of said, well, I want to get an NWSL, go back to the NWSL, and if I go now, I've got a better chance of getting a job rather than mid-season or something like that. I've seen people speculating about that.
Yeah, but Angel City.
There's been a lot of speculation as well about like maybe Liverpool have someone lined up, although that seems to have been debunked today because
they've sort of said the interim.
Amber Whiteley.
Yeah, who was the assistant manager?
Yes,
she's going to be until the end of the season.
Yeah,
then they're going to look for somebody.
Yeah,
long term.
Because I think they said on Counter Press that like maybe they've got someone lined up, and it's they kind of looked at say like the FA Cup, and thinking, well, it's kind of gone a bit stagnant under Beard, but if we bring in getting a new manager bounce kind of thing, we can, we can cause a few upsets there. But it just. Yeah, I think given the fact he's left at the end of an international break, it all feels very sudden. That it's being widely reported that he was sacked rather than it being a kind of mutual decision thing. Although Liverpool did put out like quite a nice statement about him, it wasn't clearly wasn't too kind of contentious. Otherwise, it would have just been a very quick corner flag statement. Matt Beard has left his post kind of thing, whereas it was very much a nice message. But yeah, I don't know. It feels like it feels kind of like something's probably hit a breaking point, and whether that's Beard sort of saying, this isn't good enough and I've had enough, or Liverpool kind of saying, it is what it is. You need to stop saying we've not invested kind of thing, and there being a kind of breakdown there. We don't know, obviously, but yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. I'm surprised at the timing. I think we'd already said I wouldn't be surprised
if he was gone at the end of the season.
And everyone just kind of agreed for the best. But yeah, a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and I think speaking of which, I mean, obviously we were sort of reading from that yesterday, and then news comes out today that Crystal Palace have sacked their manager as well, Laura Kaminski. Again, I believe that it was reported that she'd been sacked. It wasn't like it was anything or anything. And obviously, I think if you look at Palace are bottom of the WSL. I think obviously Villa are currently 4 points clear of them. And you look at that and you think, well, yeah, potentially not that surprising if you were sort of looking at that cold, like on paper. But I think obviously we know how difficult it is to come up into the WSL and stay up in the WSL when, that sort of level between the Championship and the WSL is still, it's a jump. And I think in contrast to Liverpool, they did invest.
Yeah, bought in a lot of players.
So, yeah, they bought 13 players in the summer. So 9 permanent, 4 on loan, 3 did expire, their loan ended in January. And then they've, bought 4 players in January, 3 permanent, 1 on loan. So, I think they've got a good blend of experience and sort of young talent that you would want. And as I feel like that's a decent squad for a sort of mid to lower, table WSL team. And, I think I don't really know what to, I don't, put my teeth in. I know less what to make of this one than I do to make of Matt Beard.
Right.
Because, I don't know, a Palace sort of thinking hang on, Villa are dropping a few points here. So if we sort of make a change here and we try and go for it, can we stay up? Rather than, I don't want to accuse Bristol of not trying to stay up last season, but it very much felt like they were sort of,
they were resigned to their fate quite early on.
I feel like they were, and it was just about sort of making as good an account of themselves as possible.
Yeah, building for the future.
And building for the future, which is fine. But I feel like, is this Palace saying no, we want to try and stay up? Which, obviously that's absolutely fair enough. Why would you not do that? But I don't know. I didn't know, I was sort of going backwards and forwards when I was preparing my notes and stuff, whether I thought this was harsh or not. Whether it, because I know I think we've both seen I think one particular Crystal Palace fan on Reddit who was very critical of of her as a manager.
And who has been for several months.
Yeah, and basically saying, like, you've got all of these players and you can't get anything out of them.
Yeah,
but I do also feel like a lot of the time when they have, I feel like they've put together a lot of good performances.
Yeah.
And they've not collapsed, or I feel like when they have lost games and dropped points, it's been like individual errors or like just moments like lapses in concentration.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
look at that Spurs home defeat recently where it's the last kick of the game, free kick from a player who I think was making a Spurs debut, and you just say, well, you know, but exactly, yeah.
There's nothing you do about that, but I feel like there's been games where it's been like, yeah, literally you've done that to yourself, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And lapses in concentration, that's not the manager, is it?
No, I mean that Brighton game they had recently as well, that was obviously an absolute nightmare own goal. And they fought back to get a draw, but it was like that was one where 100% looking at that thinking that should have been 3 points.
Exactly. And it's just these little moments, and maybe, I don't know, what's your take on it? Because I'm undecided.
I'm kind of similar. I feel fundamentally it does feel quite harsh to me. Obviously, she got them promoted last season. I know I think last season was her first year managing. I believe it might have been her second. So she's obviously she's not got a huge amount of experience. But yeah, I just...
Well, maybe that's what they're thinking then. Maybe they're thinking like not a lot of experience, so not experience of like a relegation battle. And I think they're sort of... Sorry.
No, it's okay.
But their sort of communication was, I think, something a bit more along the lines of like, there'll be something about an update on her successor in due course. So I don't know if they've actually got someone lined up, maybe. And obviously, I was straight away, I was like, Matt Beers.
Yeah.
Like, he seems like a relegation battle manager to me.
Yeah.
Like, 100%. Like, you know, making the best of what you've got. Like, I think he clearly is able to get like the buy-in of the players. Like, I think a lot of those Liverpool players, you know, I think seem to really like him. I think, you know, something springs to mind, like Gilly Flaherty talks about him a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
He managed her at West Ham. I think she had a lot of respect for him and his like management style. So he seems to be able to get the best out of players. So like, I actually think that would probably be
it would worry me from a relegation standpoint. It
would worry me from a Leicester perspective.
I mean, yeah, in terms of, like I say, I feel like she can feel hard done by.
I think so.
But equally, in terms of the reasoning compared to, say, like the Liverpool decision, I think the Liverpool one feels quite murky. And like I said, you can speculate, was Beard looking at, you know, potentially NWSL, which has been suggested, was there a breakdown over the investment? Was it actually Liverpool that drove it and Beard actually wanted to stay and Liverpool were actually like, no, you know what, this is, you know, we're not happy with the performance of the team. I feel like Palace, and I think this is basically being confirmed by Steve Parish, who's their chairman, owner, one of the two, but he kind of said, you know, we really wish her well, but it very much to me feels like they are looking at this thinking we have a real chance of staying up here. New manager bounce, or just get someone with a little, like you said, a little bit more experience, a little bit more nous, who can, I mean, we spoke about it on the other 8 already, but obviously that they've got Liverpool this weekend, which is a weird rankle, because
it's like a weird, like, when worlds colliding.
Yeah, when Beard left or was sacked, we were both saying like, I feel like that enhances Palace's chance this weekend. But then Palace Kaminski, and it now like feels like it's kind of back on par, because I'm guessing they won't announce a manager before the game, and even if they do, it's like,
yeah, but what if it was Matt Beard?
I mean, that would be hilarious.
And what if, like, obviously he's going to know exactly how to beat that team. That would be for the narrative. Crystal Palace, can you please do that?
Yeah, just back on Palace's fixtures. You know, they've still got Liverpool at home, they've got Villa at home, they've got Leicester at home, they've got West Ham at home. They are looking at that and thinking, if we can win 3 of those 4,
we could stay up.
Particularly if we beat Villa, with them being the closest to us.
Yeah,
we are in with a real chance of staying up here.
Yeah.
So I can kind of see the logic there, in that I think, from a Palace perspective, they've probably looked at it and thought, you know what, we'll make a valiant effort as it stands, but it's probably not going to work out. Whereas if we roll the dice here, there, if we can, again, going back to the sort of percentages, if we can squeeze 5-10% extra, find a manager who just feels a bit more lucky, as you said, because they seem to be, they're able to put together really good performances, but just little bits keep letting them down over and over and over again, whether it's lapse in concentration. And it's like that. I can't remember. I think it was, this might be the first time I ever quoted Abraham Lincoln on the podcast, but I feel like he said, like, I'd rather have a lucky general than a good one. And maybe that's the kind of thinking at this point. It's like, look, whatever, for all of her the praise that she deserves, it just feels like there's a kind of an aura of sort of like unluckiness. Like, this is not going to be our season. The way it's going, like, things just keep going against us. If we can get a manager in who just seems to get the rub of the green, a little bit like Matt Beard was last season, it feels like, with the underlying numbers.
Yeah.
If we can just get a manager who we can nick a late goal and win a game we were losing or something like that, then the belief will be absolutely through the roof. We've got those winnable home games. Anything can happen.
You've made me really worried now from a Leicester. But I was just laughing because, like, this must be the only women's football podcast where you'll get analogies and, like, comparisons drawn between US presidents and Laura Kaminski, manager of Crystal Palace.
Actually, you say that. You know what is really interesting?
Go on.
Do you want to know what
is this going to be interesting, or is it going to be about fucking Claire Wheeler?
Yeah. I was going to say, which Woso player do you know got name checked in the Gettysburg Address by Lincoln? It was Ruby Mace.
The problem is, normally I edit these out, and with it being video, I can't smoothly edit them out. So I'm gonna have to leave that in.
Be grateful I've not really lent into the fact that your editing hand has been restricted this week.
Oh my god! Right. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, you've sort of sold me on it. I think you've made a really good point there, and yeah, I think I did think it was sort of like, yeah, they've looked at what's going on with Villa and thought, and to be fair, like, it's like being completely unbiased, I think you'd have to sort of group us into that. Like,
yeah.
So, to be completely unbiased, you'd have to sort of group Leicester into that as well. Like, it, looking at the run of fixtures that Leicester have got, Leicester have got United away on Sunday and then Chelsea away on Wednesday. And while Leicester have had a good January, February, really, and have been lucky, I think, obviously, beating Villa, beating Liverpool, I think it's going to be difficult to build on the momentum.
Yeah.
And although I think we spoke about on the Over 8 episode that Leicester have had good home form, and that, that could be a real positive to take into, like, having Brighton, Spurs, West Ham and Palace at home. I'm taking City out of that because
we've got Palace away, but yeah.
Sorry, Palace away, yeah.
We don't talk about Palace at home.
I have nearly drunk my entire glass of wine, so forgive me if I forget details at this stage.
We don't normally drink while recording as well, we should say. We don't know why we decided to have the first video record.
Because it's Friday night and we're going for like a chilled vibe. Anyway, I'm gonna there we go. Train of thought's gone. No, so yeah, I think even that, I think, as I say, it's going to be difficult to maintain the momentum, and yeah, if you're Crystal Palace, you've got to be looking at that and thinking, yeah, there's an opportunity here, and sadly, like, yeah, we've thrown as much money as we can at it in terms of investment and bringing these players in. And there's only one thing that we can change really at this point.
Yeah, there's no more windows. There's no more changing the players. The last roll of the dice really for them.
Yeah. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Matt Beard went in there, but I don't know. Who knows? We can obviously only keep an eye on that situation, but as you say, you would expect with Palace, whereas Liverpool are like obviously having in this position where they're able to look ahead and build
for the future by saying, yeah, we'll keep the assistant manager in place until the end of the season, and then we'll look to recruit.
Yeah.
Obviously they're going to be looking to recruit now, but as you know, what I mean?
Yeah. It sounds like that.
But she did say she was going to throw her hat into the ring as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it worked for Rennie Slagers.
It did.
So if she turns it around, you never know. But yeah, but I feel like with Palace, the position that they're in, I feel like they must have somebody in mind to bring in as a bit of a sort of.
You'd think so. I'd be very, very surprised if Palace then turned around and said, it's someone off her coaching staff interim for the rest of the season. That would feel a bit odd.
Yeah,
it feels like
you got it. It's somebody's got to go in there and shake it up a bit. In there, really.
I mean, you said
they've got nothing to lose at this point.
Yeah. I mean, there's in terms of kind of veteran managers knocking around in the women's game. I don't know if there's that many names that spring to mind.
I think Matt Beard's the only one.
Yeah, Matt Beard. Yeah, but who knows? They might even go down the sort of. I mean, obviously Sean Goater is around. Has said he wants a WSL job.
Yeah,
has that kind of, aura as a former player who's been there and done it.
Could sort of, yeah. I mean, that's not a bad shout actually. Like, could sort of obviously, yeah. Really get behind the players,
Yeah, just a bit of a kind of I feel like that's kind of what you need.
I don't mean to suggest that Laura Kaminski wasn't.
No.
As in, he's been there, he knows, he can sort of go.
I do feel like, and again, I don't know a huge amount about Sean Goater and his coaching style, but based on what he did at Villa, he just kind of went in. It felt like
what he did at Villa is he played their best players in their best positions.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say kind of...
As absolutely insane as that sounds as a concept, Matt.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
I was going to say kind of maybe... And again, I don't know if this is a bit harsh on Kaminski, sort of saying she'd overcomplicate things, but maybe he can just go in, as I say, he's a decorated Formula player. He can just sort of say, you know what, I've done this, don't worry. Don't stress. It's all good. I've been there personally. It's fine. I know I've done enough to get out of this kind of thing in the past. Maybe demystify a few things, like you say. I felt like his spell at Villa. So I mean, it's harsh to judge Arroyo at this stage, but certainly from the PAL kind of Galaxy Brain team stuff, we were that was potentially going on. He just kind of went and said, Adriana Leon's good. We'll play her. Rachel Day is a good forward. Play her.
Yeah.
And as a forward, Kenza Darley's good. Play her. Well, we've won. So not to do him down or anything like that, but I feel like. Someone with a bit of a kind of a talismanic presence. I don't know. I don't know if there's any kind of even just like an ex-Lioness or someone with a bit of profile in the game who maybe they don't have a huge amount of coaching pedigree necessarily, but someone who can just talk to the fact of I've been through it all. I've won tournaments, I've won competitions, I've won leagues. Just G the players up really. And like I say, I feel like you can see what Kaminski's tried to do there, and you can generally say, were it not for a bit of bad luck, they'd probably be on a par with Villa, maybe even higher than them right now. And just having someone who can just bring the players in, get them believing in themselves that tiny bit more, bit of luck, feel like the rub of the green's going to go their way. Anything's possible. Big Sam. He's managed the Palace men's team. He knows the club.
Well, there we go. Can you imagine? To be fair, considering the last 24 hours of people being sacked left, right, and centre, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just this completely random appointment. To be quite honest with you.
Yeah. I mean, if Big Sam goes in, all bets are off.
I mean,
we're in serious trouble.
Yeah.
The entire WSL's in serious trouble, let's be honest.
I mean, what would you even do with your allegiances there?
I'd be all over the place.
Because he is the god in this house. For context, if you've not listened to this podcast before, or I don't know if we've mentioned it in a while, because men's football.
Bloody woke
Matt's a Bolton Wanderers fan.
Yeah, they don't come bigger than Big Sam.
And obviously, Big Sam presided over the most successful era of Bolton Wanderers. That's right, isn't it?
Pound for pound.
Pound for pound.
In terms of the era he was playing in, it was the biggest achievement, probably. Yeah.
So he's a god in this house.
Yes.
So yeah. How have we ended up? How have we ended up down this?
Would you rather
going on this journey?
end
of like,
up talking about
Big Sam to
Sam
Palace.
and Bolton's various historical merits, or would you rather talk about Claire Wheeler?
Yeah, I knew that was coming. I could see that coming.
You could feel it.
I could feel it coming. Yeah. On that note, yeah, thank you for listening and for watching. For the first time. We may continue this if it goes well. If it,
Alternatively, if it's gone badly.
I mean, it feels like it's gone well. I hope hope you've enjoyed putting a face to the name, or if you're new here, hello. We normally just audio, but we are people with faces.
It's just dispelling the myth that this was all an AI-generated podcast all along, and it's all been ChatGPT pumping out woso opinions.
Don't think even ChatGPT could weave the narrative of Kaminski and Abraham Lincoln.
Hallucinate this much about Claire Wheeler.
No. So yeah, I mean, yeah. Thank you for listening and watching. Do hit subscribe wherever you're listening or watching, to make sure you keep up with us. And I will say as well, I am sort of trying to get back onto social. So we're on Blue Sky now.
Are we as a pod on Blue Sky?
We are on Blue Sky as a pod. I love how you don't even know that. Are you even on Blue Sky?
No. Don't really know what it is.
So yeah, just look us up on Blue Sky. Why was she on Blue Sky? I haven't posted on there yet, but I will. Yeah, just to keep up with us. And yeah, I mean, on Spotify in particular, ratings are always appreciated. Helps us sort of grow and helps with the visibility and stuff. So thank you for listening / watching, and yeah, come back next week for potentially more video content.
Definitely more audio
Definitely
content.
more audio content, but video content to be decided. But I've quite enjoyed it.
I have too. Obviously, if we beat Man United on Sunday, expect a live feed on. I don't know if you can do it on Blue Sky, but it was just after about 18 pints.
You really don't know what Blue Sky is, do you?
No.
Anyway,
it's a sort of cryptocurrency, right?
Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.